Welcome to Cayman Conversations Season 3. My name is Ralph Lewis. In our first interview, I spoke with Danny Coleman and John Tibbetts about the 2024 hurricane season forecast, hurricane preparedness, and other related topics. The annual hurricane season will start in 6 weeks. The forecast indicates an above average season with 20 named storms, 9 hurricanes, and 4 major hurricanes. Now, let's hear from our experts. Danny and John, welcome back to Cayman Conversation. I've been waiting for this conversation for a long time. How are you folks doing today?
We're great, Ralph. Great to speak to you as always, and great to speak to your listeners as well.
Great to be here. Good to have a conversation with you, Ralph.
Okay. Well, it's May and coming next month, and we are now towards the end of April. I didn't want to wait till we get into the last week in May and heading into June to talk about hurricane season. And so that's why we're starting this conversation fairly early. And Mr. John, can you just tell me what's forecasted for 2024?
Well, before we get into the forecast itself, okay, let's just take a little brief look back at 2023. 2023, we had 20 named storms, 7 hurricanes, and 3 major hurricanes. I suspect that if you asked the average Caymanian, they would not recognize the fact that the Atlantic season last year was that active, because we really didn't have that much to speak about here. But we're talking about the prediction of storms that form anywhere between us and mother country up in England and all of the east coast of the United States, all the way over to Africa. So it's a rather large area, and it's not unusual for the season to be very active, and yet nothing really bothers a certain area. And so the people in that area go like, well, did we really have a hurricane season? Yeah, okay.
Yes.
So that's the first part of it. The second part has to do with the precursors. And that's what the seasonal prediction people are looking at. Okay. So when the scientists are starting to put together the season prediction, there are some elements that they include in that seasonal prediction. The first thing they look at is the sea surface temperatures in the Atlantic Ocean. So I pulled up the current sea surface temperatures and what we call the anomalies of it. And the temperatures are running anywhere from 2 to about 4 degrees above normal in the Atlantic Basin. We're talking more the Eastern Atlantic Basin than the Western Atlantic Basin. Some of the Western Atlantic Basin is still having some impacts from the winter months and what have you. So you're getting little bubbles of cold air that comes down and give you little pockets of cold, lower than normal sea surface temperatures. But the Atlantic Basin, when you're looking at sea surface temperatures, you're starting to look more out in the heart of the Atlantic Basin, as ocean, as it were. And those are running somewhere between 2 to 4 degrees. Okay. The second component of that is what we call the El Nino La Nina cycle. All right. The ENSO is what it's called. And what the prediction on that is, and it is very tricky, and sometimes it does make a fool of a lot of us. All right. But the idea basically right now is that right now we're in the process of transitioning from an El Nino cycle that was in place all last year to a neutral phase right now. Okay, so there's an 85% chance of that being in place between April and June of this year. Okay, and then there's a full transition over to the La Nina cycle by June to August, and they're giving that a 60% chance. So not a definite, but a fairly strong chance that for the heart and soul of our hurricane season this year, we will have a La Nina cycle. Okay, both of those work together to produce forecast that indicates a very active season. Colorado State is usually our main indicator of what's going to happen in the Atlantic Ocean, and their prediction came out on April the 4th. Usually in the first week of April of every year, Colorado State puts out their prediction. And they're calling for an extremely active season. Now remember, we had 20 named storms last year. So This year, they're saying we're going to get 23 named storms. All right. We're going to have 11 hurricanes, and we're going to have 5 major hurricanes. Okay. Now, in terms of what that means, okay, and that is this is the most active season that Colorado State has forecast since they started releasing products in 1996. Okay. And to be honest with you, my experience goes back to the mid 1980s, and I do not recall a hurricane season prediction of this caliber. All right, so it is going to be a very active season, and we're going to be sitting on the edge of our seats, and we're going to be hearing a lot of names on storms all around the place. Okay, I don't know how many is going to be in the Northwest Caribbean. It doesn't give that kind of detail, but just know that it is predicted to be a very active season.
Thank you, John. That sounds fairly serious, but it's good to know what we're expecting and what we're geared up for. Danny, we're going to call you in right here. Seeing that we're going to be fairly active, are all our plans in place? So what should people be doing right now?
Ralph, great to be here again. And I think just to sort of reiterate John's points, I mean, last year we started this time last year, it was looking to be a below average season. Of course, the forecast has changed throughout the season, and we saw that very much last year. But it is a significantly increased cyclone activity this year, as we've seen so far from Colorado State University. And again, as John says, it's one we tend to rely on. So we are taking this pretty seriously. At the end of the day, though, of course, as we say every year, no matter what the forecast is, it really only takes one storm to totally change your life and your island and the way we know life to be. So it doesn't really matter whether it's a really, really severe season or whether it looks like it's a low season. I'd say that the preparation, everyone's personal preparations, as well as ours here at Hazard Management and the government, wouldn't change no matter what the season is. We saw some rapid intensification last year quite quickly, or very, very rapidly for some storms. And again, we never ever want to be putting ourselves in that position. So preparedness is always going to be the same for us. And we really strongly recommend that to the public as well. So it's little things like, knowing where you're going to shelter, knowing you've got an emergency supply kit. It's a perfect time of year to be looking at that supply kit and making sure you've got what you need if by chance an emergency happens. And I say emergency, to me, hurricane season, obviously we'd have hurricane kits, but at the same time, anything could happen. We have earthquake potential in the region. We have tsunami potential. We have a lot of sudden onset events that could dramatically change your life. So we'd always strongly fight for a hazard kit, an emergency kit that would actually be available throughout the whole year, not just for the hurricane season. But of course, it's a great time to a reminder for everyone to look at that kit this time of year and say, okay, well, I know that the certain cans of food are past the sell-by date, or I need to get extra medication because my medications has changed, or we have more members of the family, more children in the family, or we have pets or so forth. So it's sort of a very good time to be looking at that, both your own personal plans, but also your own kits, and really identify if you need to update it. It's a great time of year to do that. But again, arguably the whole time of year, throughout the whole year, we should be ready for any eventuality. Now, one of the things we've done recently at Hazard Management is to produce an all hazard booklet. So this covers everything from earthquakes to fires to tsunamis to pretty much any emergency that we might face, man-made and natural emergencies in the world for Cayman. So again, we strongly encourage people to pick that up. All supermarkets have them. We have a load here at the Government Administration Building. We're happy to provide them for your businesses. We also have an updated hurricane booklet as well, and that really has some really good hints and tips and tricks as to make sure that you're prepared for the season. And from shut up your house to supplies to shelter, maps to what kind of things might look like in the recovery phase. That's really, really important. Again, I think we've all got quite good at making sure that we're ready for a storm, but what happens afterwards when you haven't got any electricity, or what happens afterwards when you've got no sanitation, no toilet facilities, no water? It's those kind of things we really want people to think about, because the reality is the aftermath is often worse than the actual event itself.
Yes, that's right. Well, thank you for those introductions and just letting us know what's happening. In our last conversation last year, I asked a question about hurricane shelters, and there was a promotion of hurricane shelters. And my question was, do we have enough shelters for the community? And I think one of the answers that you gave, Danny, was that employers should actually help their employees try to find some places. And I must say, I've had discussions with some employers, and they've built these structures. And in planning for these structures, they've told me that this is where the staff will shelter.
That's
and so
awesome.
That came forward. And
that's really cool, Ralph. I love hearing that, because it's, again, I think we all have a responsibility, our own personal, in my family, for example, I'll always expect my family to figure out what it is they're going to, where they'll be sheltering. So we have added a few shelters that are coming online this year, including Bontown Church of God will be coming online, and expansions in our current other shelters. And that list is, funny enough, my team's out this week doing those assessments with Public Works Department and Facilities and Health Services Authority. So that list will be coming out very, very soon as to what the shelters are for this year. And as I say, we have got a bit of expansion on that. We have, as you say, Ralph, always encouraging private companies to be able to look after their own. So if you have, as an employee, we strongly ask you or encourage you to ask your employer whether your business will be looking after you during a storm. And also, again, looking at friends and family, community, who can help you if you need assistance. I think at the end of the day, a lot of people still live on the coast, single story houses, or, we know the average height above sea level is 7 foot in Grand Cayman, and obviously Little Cayman have their own issues. BRAC has a bit more height, but at the same time, we're all vulnerable. We all live in a hurricane belt. So making sure you know where you will shelter, and also what you can take to a public shelter. And just to remind everyone, the public shelters, whilst they're available, they're certainly not comfortable. There's no, you have to bring your own food. There's no showering capabilities. So all those kind of think about when you're planning what you will do if a Cat 5 comes this year. Please bear in mind that you really want to look at alternatives, because again, the public shelters are what they are. They're just a shelter to provide a roof over your head that's secure, but it certainly has no frills or any of that kind of stuff. And I for one would not want to be in a public shelter if I could avoid it. So yeah, please really think outside the box a bit. And again, we're here to help. And those booklets that we provided from Hazard Management can really help with that planning.
Okay, great. Mr. John, as we're talking about hurricane shelters, for people such as yourself who have to work while the hurricane is passing, what do you do with your family and your loved ones? What do you recommend to those people who have to leave their homes or leave their family? Can they take them with you to work? What do you suggest?
I just want to put one little point in on back up on what Danny said. Okay. One of my little pet peeves of sorts is that whenever you have a major storm go through your area, okay, and after the major storm has gone through, you look up and you go like, the rooftop stayed on, house stayed fairly intact, we're good to go. Okay, understand something, that every time you get one of those major hurricanes hit, it weakens your house. Okay, one of the best things you can do is, before that hurricane season comes around, get in and have your straps and everything with regards to your house and your rooftop in particular. Make sure that those are all in order. Okay, when that hurricane hits and when things clamp down, the disaster management people are not going to be able to get to you, not without endangering their own lives. Okay, you need to be able to survive until things settle down a bit and we can get to you. And even after that, sometimes it's difficult. I remember after Hurricane Ivan, those that were traveling out to the Eastern District were held up quite a bit while they sorted out Mariners Cove, as Mariners Cove was in the middle of the road. Okay. In terms of your question you was asking, and please remind me of it again, please.
Yes.
Where do we go during a storm, and where do our families
Where do we go with our families? Okay.
I have John tied died at my hip, Ralph, during any
Yeah,
activation.
I usually
I become his work wife during these kind of
and
incidents.
my staff usually just say to me, John, you're in government admin, okay? In reality, if it's a major storm, Cat 3, 4, or 5, then it's going to mean that I will be carrying a team to the government admin building. All right. It usually involves myself, another forecaster, and 2 observers to start to record information and collect information during the storm itself. Okay. Doesn't mean that they're walking out to the plot to take temperatures or anything like that, but we'll take data from automatic weather stations and we'll try to get information on clouds and what have you. When we're collecting that information, it's invaluable for the Hurricane Center.
And actually, just to add to that, sorry, John, very quickly. Again, the National Emergency Operations Centre is located here at Government Administration Building. So we do have all the key stakeholders around the tables. There's usually about 75 people involved in that at all the different levels, strategic, executive, as well as the National Emergency Tactical Operations Center. So we are allowed to bring in our immediate family members, but that is a very, very small core team to the government admin building. But again, the government admin building isn't a public shelter. So it is. It really has to be very, very specific. We also have sort of dorm areas. I mean, not that any of us really get much sleep, but it's really important that we do get a bit of a break away from the National Emergency Operations Center, because as you can imagine, there's a lot of noise, a lot of chaos. Just to make those decisions that we do have to make, after about 25 hours of operating, you need to have had a bit of a break. So we tend to sort of sit in a dark room and either meditate or try and get a few hours sleep. But that rotation, we'll always have a rotation for each one of us. So let's say John has a rotation at number 2 and I have number 2 to stand on when I have a couple of hours off, just to sort of breathe and get a bit of respite.
I have a philosophy, and that is if Cayman's getting hit by a major hurricane, I don't sleep between beginning and end. Listen.
But he can be taught by the end.
Listen. You guys look at it and you go, "Oh my God, the place is getting mashed up" and all that kind of stuff. And I look at nature in a different kind of way. We're a different set of cats. On my breaks are usually to go downstairs and look at how strong the wind is blowing or how strong the rain is falling and stuff like that. And those are the things that grabs me and it provides extra information to me in terms of what's going on outside right now. Maybe we're going through a band of showers. Maybe we're going through a spiral band. Yeah. And maybe we've seen the best. Maybe we've seen the worst. Maybe we can detect some tornadoes. Whatever it is. But the fascination of the science is there, and sometimes for me it's like a breath of fresh air, just to step away from the disaster management. I know it's destroying the island and all that kind of stuff, but to step away from the disaster management and just appreciate the power of nature.
And I think that's it, John. That's a great point. It's like, Mother Nature is your form of meditation. So that's how you get your respite away from the madness of the NEAC. Some of us like to be in a dark room. Some of us like to be out, seeing the outdoors and Mother Nature at her finest. And it is incredibly powerful. I'll give you that, definitely.
Yeah, and
but to answer the question, John.
In terms of my family,
yes.
As Danny has said, usually my immediate family comes with me. Now, the last one the one that we was really ramped up for was really Ivan. And back then the center was really the old fire station. And I ended up having it so happens that my older brother was a fireman. And so my mother, my wife, all my children, my brother, his wife, all of us was there in the building, and it takes a bit of the stress off of my shoulder to know my family's with me. Otherwise, at times, I have to be about the country's business or the business of the National Weather Service, ensuring that the government is properly informed about what's going on. I will say that, knock on wood, sometime in the next season, we're hoping to have our National Weather Service building, and we'll be talking about potentially some different setups for this, because perhaps instead of bringing my team with me, my team will be operating from the National Weather Service building and relaying the information over to me.
Yeah.
So, we'll see how that works. I knock on wood because it's been taking some time. All right.
And I brought up that topic because I wanted our readers and listeners just to understand the sacrifices that you and your team, both Danny and your John and your team, make during those times. And we're dependent on your information. And believe me, I've been through a number of hurricanes, and the stress levels of the family members around you is so much. And you, as a head of a household, have to manage that and keep it calm. And it's amazing the needs and the understanding that goes with that.
I give you one other one, Ralph. I give you one other one, Ralph, and that's the staff, my staff.
Yeah,
okay. What we have a tendency to do is that if we have a Cat 5 storm coming, when tropical storm force winds come, operations at the operational center here at the General Aviation Terminal, CIAA, shuts down.
Yeah.
Okay, all the flights will stop at that time. Our operations center, it shuts down. The staff then at the administration at GAB then picks up the slack. Okay, what we have a tendency to do is, as weathermen and as individuals that are tracking the storm, we have a tendency to try and predict when that transfer is going to occur. And what we want to do is the person that is the closest, that lives the closest to the National Weather Service building, is the last person we want working. All right? Because that individual is going to have to shut up shop here and then get home. All right? And I wouldn't want that person having to drive all the way to West Bay or drive all the way to North Side in the middle of these strong winds and bad weather. All right? So some of the things that are also on our heads at that particular time is our staffing. Now, I know in Danny's case, a lot of her staff are then tied up at the EOC and all of the emergency things, but not all of the National Weather Service are tied up in that kind of context. So we have to look out for our staff as well.
And I think going to that point, John, I mean, again, a lot of it is making sure our own families are ready for any eventuality. I mean, again, I think if our families aren't ready, then we're not comfortable that they're ready. And so, of course, we start doing our lists very early on in the year, making sure that our supplies are in, making sure that my husband knows where I'm going to be, what's the kind of setup. And again, a lot of conversations go into that, making sure our families are prepared so we feel comfortable that everything's kind of ready to go. And any first responder in the national emergency setup has the same kind of ideas. Like, we really need to, for us to be working, we need to have our own house shopping gear before even the season gets anywhere close.
Exactly. All right, thank you for your discourse on that topic. A major topic that's on my mind, Danny, maybe you can speak to it, is that radar. I miss it. And
I think my friend John Tibbetts will have to speak about the radar, because that's a weather service thing, not unfortunately not ours, or maybe fortunately not ours.
Mr. John,
the radar's on my shoulders. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Not on Danny's. Danny's. This is. That's not her baby, as it were.
Not my baby.
It belongs to the National Weather Service, especially when it's not working. It's definitely not her baby. The radar has been down since October, and we've been working on trying to get it up. But also in collaboration with the Cabinet Office, Premier, and all as head of the Cabinet Office, as it were, we've been working on a more robust plan to bring the radar up, but to make sure the radar continues to function and remain up for a lengthy period of time. Reminder that the radar is some 12 years old. It has produced a lot of good data for us, especially early on in its life. There were no problems with it. Okay, it's just over the last few years that we started to see more prolonged downtimes as we've incurred some problems with it. But we're working through something right now, and there will be updates coming soon, hopefully, as we work through this process and get to a situation where we can give some good news to the Caymanian public about the weather radar in terms of when it's going to be up and the program. We can start to reveal some of the program that's around it and some of the extensive work that's been done behind the scenes on it.
And so just to add to that, Ralph, again, and John, there's quite a lot of work that we're doing together with the weather. Now, I appreciate radar is not our baby, and we keep ourselves a bit detached from that. But there's some really other, sorry, John, there's some really other cool projects going on. So, for example, we're doing a flood sensor network right now, and we've just got sort of a few projects in the community getting rolled out. We've had one at government admin to test it as a sort of guinea pig trial. But the flood sensor network will be able to help with sensing what flood areas, so most vulnerable areas, for example, we're working on Randite right now, we'll be working in Savannah Gully, numerous other places that we know are very low lying. And so the idea is to extend that network quite widely across all 3 islands. Obviously, this takes time. We want to make sure that the actual setup works, all solar based. And that feed is directly coming into our offices here at Hazard Management. So we have one just outside here that every time I turn on the screen next door here in our office, I can see exactly what the layers are, the levels are. Do a lot of work on tsunami modeling, do a lot of work with John and storm surge and so forth. So there's some really exciting other technology that's happening to make sure that we're sort of cutting edge and again being, demonstrating good practice in the region and so forth.
Yeah, and to back up what Danny was saying there, when we had that monster nor'wester, usually I've had friends laugh and joke at me and say, well, once the hurricane season passes, you can shut down the weather service because we don't have no purpose after the hurricane season's finished. And I would love to have seen his face this year when we had that massive nor'wester came in. And we haven't had one of those in a long time. But that massive nor'wester destroyed one of our sensors in the harbor. And it's a storm surge sensor. And we're very proud to say that the National Weather Service has gone back and we've got a new sensor and it's been installed. We have also, in the process of installing it, we've actually increased the height on where the sensor is located with the idea, hopefully, to prevent it from being destroyed so easily next time. Not that storm was not a massive storm. It's just that if we bring it up another 10, 15 feet in the air, maybe we save the sensor and we don't have to go back through the process of repurposing it and what have you. Alongside the storm surge sensor and the flood sensors, National Weather Service with the Cabinet Office is working on a project to have a fairly decent size network of automatic weather stations across the islands. All right. And we'll see how that plays out and where we put the sensors and what have you. I can tell you some of the schools are targeted for the sensors and some other prominent places, but we're going to have sensors not just in Grand Cayman, Brack, and Little Cayman as well. Okay. And my climatologist is going to be in hog's heaven when that comes because that's a lot of data is going to be flowing out. As somebody that's a bit of a mathematician in my own right, I would have loved to have been playing around with all those numbers, to be honest with you. And that's a ton of data.
Yes. Well, I'm so happy that you took the time out to come and talk with me today. I feel more comfortable that the country is in safe hands, whatever Mother Nature brings. And so, your final comments, you may want to talk about what's happening around the world because we're seeing a lot of strange weather, particularly in the Gulf, and that's in Middle East. There's been a huge flood in the desert. So, in your final words, you want to just any notes for our listeners and just speak about atomic fury, please.
Well,
Danny, you first.
You want me to take it first, or Danny, you're going to take it first?
John, you take it first, and ladies first. Okay, ladies first.
Ladies first. Go ahead. I'm fine.
John can speak a bit more about worldwide. We're all monitoring the weather here, but as always, as Hazard Management, we monitor all different types of emergencies, and we have I'll have to invite you in here, Ralph, one day to show you the sort of earthquake monitoring, tsunami monitoring, and all sorts of stuff. But in regards to sort of hazard management perspective, again, just to really strongly encourage the public just to be ready for any eventuality, to pick up our booklets on hurricane booklet as well as our multi-hazard booklet, to just have their families ready. I mean, I think it's so critical. But also, I mean, we do a lot of work with elderly people and caretakers, with school presentations, and we can tailor it to any business. We do a lot of private businesses as well. We can tailor a sort of hurricane 101 or a all hazard presentation or a fire drill or a tsunami drill, whatever you want. We're very, very open to working with all schools, with all service clubs like Rotary, Kiwanis, Lions, Ministers Association, with all private businesses, anyone who wants us to come and talk to you about hurricane preparedness and look at your specific vulnerabilities. I think that's one of the things we're pretty proud of, especially coming out of the earthquake issue we had in 2020. We go to schools now and tailor our presentations and our response evacuation plans, particularly to what that specific risk is. Because everyone's risk in Cayman is different in regards to tsunami, in regards to hurricane, depending on the direction of the storm. So we want to make sure that everyone is ready. And again, given that we're here very much to help you, we want to make sure that everyone starts the season on June 1st, feeling very empowered, feeling very, very ready for what could be a very, very busy season. Thanks, Val.
Thank you, Danny. Mr. John?
Thanks.
So I just want to piggyback, not necessarily on what Danny was saying, but talking about necessarily climate change and how it's impacting the world and stuff like that.
Sorry, John, I'm going to send you some WD-40 over for your chair.
For my chair, I might need it for my knees. Anyway,
squeaky chair and your squeaky knees.
Some of the things that are kind of lost in the grand scheme of things with regards to the impact of climate change, okay, is the increase of extreme events. Okay, and we're not talking about earthquakes here and tsunamis, because those are seismic in nature. Okay, so we kind of take those away. There is some research that links some of that stuff together, but I'm a whole lot of skeptical about it, to be honest with you. However, okay, we look at what's going on in the Middle East right now. Dry. All of a sudden, you get 2 years of rainfall in a 24-hour period, 48-hour period. Okay, an increase of extreme events. Okay, we look from the hurricane perspective, and we notice that research is indicating now that there have been increases in terms of the number of times in which we're getting rapid intensification. Okay, and the bad news, you live in the Northwest Caribbean. We already have all of the ingredients here during the hurricane season for rapid intensification. Okay, and I dare say one of the things that I intend to reach out to the Hurricane Center for is I want to get a list of the number of rapid intensifications and where they occurred. And I'm going to tell you what's not going to surprise John Tibbetts, or should surprise anybody, is that quite a number of them would have occurred in the Northwest Caribbean near here. Okay, and this is linked to climate change and linked to the increased heat energy that's being stored in the seawater. Okay, and all I can say with regards to it is that life is going to get much more strenuous and much more hazardous as you go along. Okay, if that forecast plays out, we're going to have back-to-back years now with 20 or more storms. Okay, all right, and what's next year going to happen? I don't know, but I can just tell you, I mean, when you get 20 or more storms, you increase the possibility that the Cayman Islands will get hit. Okay, when you increase the number of major hurricanes, you increase the chance that the Cayman Islands will get hit. Okay, so you're not just increasing the chance that we're going to get hit by a weak storm, but we're increasing it by getting hit by a major storm. And major storms are the ones that change your lives and change the trajectory of countries in terms of where they are financially and socially and everything else. Usually when a major hurricane hits you, it takes 4 or 5 years to recover. Okay, so
sometimes 20.
Sometimes more.
You're so right, John. I mean, this is totally the new normal. I think that's why we're not aghast when we see this kind of forecast, because this is what it is. And I think, in the future, this is it is very much the norm. We see this rapid intensification, as John mentioned. We see the fact that these big number of storms or big calamities around the world are happening. Again, sometimes, you see COVID spreading much quicker because, of course, of transportation and the movability of people. And so I think it's one of those things that we all need to be kind of aware of and not put our heads in the sand and just know, you're empowered by being educated on what your risks are. And the more empowered you can be on this, the less fear you have, and you sort of demystify what can happen. So we really strongly encourage that. So that education and that, becoming part of that process and, owning it and saying, I'm going to have my supplies. I'm going to know what the weather is. I'm going to listen to verified sources. I'm going to do my bit as a member of the public to help my own family, but also, of course, our neighbors and our friends and so forth.
Yes. John, final word?
I just want to take one time out and just say that I'm going to be celebrating a bit this year. And that is, over the past year, we've added 3 trainee observers and 1 trainee forecaster. That forecast is expected to hit the bench this year. So we will gladly take on board the extra expertise and the extra manpower that these officers will bring to us. And it certainly puts the National Weather Service in a better position to handle the jobs that you, the people, asked of us to do. And special thanks to the government for supporting us in terms of these hirings and the necessary training that these individuals have to go through.
Well, Danny and John, thank you for joining me today here at Cayman Conversations and emphasizing the importance of being prepared, not only because it's going to be a hectic season coming ahead, but it's happening now, like John mentioned, and being prepared can save lives, can save families, and I encourage everyone to take it very seriously. Thank you very much, and see you next time.
Thank you so much. Thank you, listeners.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Al. Take care.
We thank Danny and John for the invaluable contribution and look forward to further updates as the hurricane season approaches. Remember, now is the time to make your preparations. After this song from our local artists, we discuss Cayman's affordable housing with Mr. Eric Bush, Chief Officer in the Ministry of Planning, Agriculture, Housing, Infrastructure, Transport and Development.
Red light.
Smiling, another clear blue perfect day. A warm breeze from the ocean, warm breeze blows your troubles away.
Welcome back to Cayman Conversations. Today with us, we have Mr. Eric Bush.
Good morning, sir. Thank you. Welcome. It's happy to be here. So thank you. In this context and for this conversation, the hat I'm wearing is as the Chief Officer for the Ministry of Housing. Of course, the ministry, as you say, has many different subject matters: planning, agriculture, infrastructure, transportation, development, utility, regulation, etc. But for the purpose of this conversation, we're going to focus on housing, whether that be public housing, affordable housing, or as we like to rephrase it, attainable housing.
Yes, very well. Okay. And affordable housing has been a discussion of many people, and especially younger folks who are trying to get homes. And there's a consultation period, and I think it's coming close to the end. Just tell us more about the consultation.
So, for the first time, at least in recent memory, the Cayman Islands government has decided to take a strategic look at housing in the Cayman Islands and what that means. Historically, we have allowed this to be serviced organically or via the private sector. But as Cayman's population continues to grow at the pace that it is seen that we now need to be more considered and take more direct action in terms of providing and or facilitating public housing for those individuals who simply cannot afford housing themselves, or for individuals who can afford to facilitate housing for Caymanians, young and old, because this is not a matter that affects any particular age bracket. We're talking about economics, and we're talking about one of the primal needs of all individuals, and that is shelter.
Yes.
The consultation itself is with the contracted consultant out of the United States, Public Works LLC, who is a subject matter expert in the area of public and affordable and attainable housing. They have launched a month-long interaction period or consultation period where we're asking all members of the public to participate in, to give us their views, to give us their suggestions, to give us their solutions about how they believe Cayman should progress in terms of providing housing and shelter for Caymanians and for all residents.
Yes. In the past, we may have done many programs where we've asked for input from the public. Have you seen, or from basic on your research so far, have you seen a good take-up or responses from the public?
We've seen some, but in these type of situations, especially something as important as housing, and I just want to stress, for the Cayman Islands, this is all three islands program and initiative. We would like to see more. We would like to have a good representation of the population, so they can see the questions that are asked, and more importantly, provide the answers and what they're thinking, what they're feeling, what they believe are the solutions for housing and for shelter for the people of the Cayman Islands.
Yes. And from a media perspective, and I've mentioned this over and over again, we don't get enough involvement from the community. We do hear some of the questions, some of the concerns, some of the worries, but when there is a consultation period and we ask for feedback, we don't get enough feedback. And feedback is so important to moving forward. Just give an idea of how important their feedback is in creating a pulse to move forward.
Well, we cannot do this without the community involvement. We cannot do this. We will not be able to find the solutions in totality unless we have a good representation of those of the community. We're trying to promote it as best we can through programs such as yours. We're offering incentives insofar as anybody who participates is eligible for gift cards from donating companies around the islands. So we're trying our endeavor best to get community involvement, and the way in which they get involved is simply taking 10 minutes of their time to fill out a simple questionnaire and give us their thoughts and their solutions of how we should move forward in solving what we're considering a housing crunch.
Yes, and I may go further, so it's a housing crisis. And for one perfect example is mine. My 25-year-old son just returned from university last year. He got a very nice job, but knowing the numbers from housing and the cost of housing, he'd have a challenge in a year when he's ready to apply for a mortgage. And the question is, where does he go to live? Or how much can he expect to spend and afford? Yes. And so therefore, I think not only he should give feedback, but his family, right? It affects me, it affects the parents and everyone. So this is where I'm seeing it is so important. And I hope that we get some greater feedback, from the community. When's the deadline for the feedback?
The current close off is the end of this month. I'm corrected, the 19th of April, but I do believe we're going to extend it for at least another 2 weeks, because we really want to make every effort to try and keep it's been rolling for over 3 weeks. But the take up that we've had, whilst we appreciate everybody who's taken it thus far, we really would like to get more community involvement and participation in this.
And as I mentioned, it's not only the ones who are looking for homes, but the family members who may already have homes, but they have an interest to make sure that their family and like I say, it's for you old and young, may need some place to own and live. And when we see the rental market where it is today, it's so expensive to rent something. And one of the reasons is because there's a demand. Because of the demand, the price is so high. But if this program would take off, then we'll be providing homes for those people who are renting and are renting for life or renting for years. And as we know, it's so good to own piece of the rock, as we say. Yes. Yeah. Can you just speak about home ownership, please? How important it is?
Well, it's a very cultural reality for Cayman, as you rightly said. The sort of part of the Caymanian dream is owning a part of that rock, or part of our rock, and what that looks like, I think over time is going to have to change. But I also think it is changing, particularly with our younger generation coming up, whereby if they do have the awesome opportunity of going overseas and studying, they're most of the jurisdictions that they're going to have higher density, higher buildings, higher structures. So the living accommodation that they are seeing, not only in the student quarters, but also their professors and grown, the older adults, I should say, is not that sort of suburban spread out yard, but more more congested, not congested is the wrong word, more condensed. Yes.
Condensed, yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. And yes, go ahead, please.
No, I was just saying, I think inevitably, because the landmass that Cayman has is finite, and the way in which we're trying to move things forward is conserve more land. That again is pinching what available land we're going to have for development. So I do think inevitably we're going to have to go higher. Yeah. So and I guess what I'm trying to say is the offering that we have for home ownership will have to be shared.
Yeah. And I agree. One of the concerns I had when I was speaking with my son is about proximity to work. he works in Georgetown, and he has he's not the person who can work from home at this stage, and transportation will not change right away at this stage, as you know. So to move from an outlying district into Georgetown is going to take longer and longer and longer. And so therefore, living in Bordentown, for example, even Savannah, in the morning takes a good 25, 30 minutes to get to work. And that's going to get. So therefore, if I'm at his age, do I want to really buy a property in the Eastern Districts or West Bay or, Savannah? It's something that we have to think about. And for example, availability of land, we may have to look at structures like building communities where, it's shared, and like 1-bedroom apartments, 2-bedroom apartments, but can be owned. And in a location where its proximity to the employment areas is a lot smaller. And I see an example coming up. I don't know if that's what's going to be, but on the West Bay Road next to Costellas, there's a building, being built there. And I'm thinking it looks like maybe one of those apartment buildings is coming up there. I don't know if that's what it is, but something similar to that can probably work with that mindset. But come back to the point where we have to probably share the land space and go higher, maybe a couple of stories high.
Yeah, that's I think inevitably, if anybody puts their mind to it, that's the natural evolution.
Yes, and that then becomes a mindset, because I've been here over 40 years, and I know everyone wants to have their home, like you said, wants a yard, wants a little backyard garden, and I don't want to. I want to have a fence and a wall, and that's what I grew up in. So therefore, I need to have that. But that kind of home is gonna be very expensive, and maybe they can afford it later on. But for now, at the starter home, I think they might have to look at something like a condo unit or condo complex sort of arrangement.
And it's also about affordability. And what I mean by that is, if you have a standalone home, it's a single structure that's surrounded by a small piece of yard and garden, versus a multi-unit complex. So all of the costs associated with my home ownership is mine and mine alone. All of the cost of trying to cool and insulate that structure on all sides and above and below are mine. But if it's a multi-unit development, all of those costs are shared. You start to share and get the economies of scale of insurance, of cooling, of the building itself. So it's this crunch or crisis that we're talking about is more of an economic crisis, because it's talking about the actual affordability and attainability of the housing. It's the issue of supply and demand, but what type of supply can we actually provide to meet the demand? I dare say the way in which we've been going about it in buying large plots of land and cutting them up into smaller lots for individual houses. I dare say that's going to have to change, because that's not very. It's proven that it's not very efficient. It's not very. It's not economically friendly for the individuals in terms of having to maintain the garden or the yard that they have, even as as small as it is. The electricity cost is all theirs. The insurance cost is all theirs. The maintenance of everything is all theirs. Whereas if you have an apartment block, which gives you the same amenities or enhanced amenities in some instances than what we provided before, those costs are a lot lower. I mean, I have a friend that has the same square footage as I do, and his electricity bill, because it's in a development, is half or greater than half of my electricity bill, because I'm having to cool all my sides and above, whereas he, even though he has the same square footage, it's far more efficient.
Yes, and I like that mindset. We have to start thinking outside of the box as we move forward, because the solutions are not going to come if we continue to go the way we go. And like you said, looking at those developments where we've done affordable housing, as this has been
call it. You have a number of smaller homes. They're actually very close to each other.
Yes.
You could almost stick your hand out one window and put it in the next window of the other house. So that sort of space around your home has gone away, even when you look at those projects. Right. So, you actually, like you said, you have the cost of a whole home, but don't have the luxury of a home in the proper yard.
Exactly.
And so if those buildings were come together, you could save maybe about 20% of the cost easily.
Yes.
And that's a big, when you're looking at large numbers, that's a good portion of it. So when you talk about affordable, and just mention this point some more for us, I think it's a good way of educating the public. Affordable comes in many ways, yes. And how we deal with it is important. And having this consultation and their feedback can help. Just finalize on that, please.
No, absolutely. And this is something that I would really like to especially invite our expat community to participate in, because many of them have come from jurisdictions who have dealt with this and have different solutions for this. So I would really appreciate as well the expat community get involved in this, because they inevitably have a different point of view, a different experience. They've grown up in a different community that perhaps deals with housing and shelter in a different way, and we would really like to hear from them as well.
So the house, I appreciate that, and I beg all our listeners and viewers and readers, feel free. We welcome you to participate in this consultation, like you mentioned, our expat community, our residents. Just give us some feedback as to what you've experienced and your ideas, because it's always good to hear other people's suggestions. Does the affordable housing look at the financing aspect of it, or just the buildings?
So this consultation will certainly look at what is affordable in Cayman, but in terms of accessing finance, that's another program that the ministry is actively working on in participation with our commercial banks. Yes.
And as in that day to my hand, I spent my younger life in banking, and I've seen the cost of housing rise and the challenges with getting home. So it's very important that it's a good time to get some feedback on that. Yes. As well. Yes,
absolutely.
Yes. As we come towards the end, when we're gonna have to wrap up, Mr. Bush, I would like to invite you back to keep talking about this, because what I've learned in media is that you can't mention something once. We have to keep reminding people and asking them to comment. And like you said, your plan, it may extend the deadline, but it's always good to keep talking about it, keep it in people's minds, because this is a major shift in how I think Cayman looks at housing, yes, and homes. And you just add to that 1 minute, please, just to encourage our people that we have to think out the box.
Well, first off, it's a pleasure to come on this show and others. So I'm happy to come on again and continue talking about this and other national issues that we're addressing within the ministry. So happy to accept any invitation for that. But similarly, I would like to also invite our community, our public, the people who live and care about the Cayman Islands. This is your opportunity to give your voice, to give your solutions, to give your thoughts about how we in the Cayman Islands should address the housing issues that we're all challenged with.
Yes, thank you very much. And I support wholeheartedly that direction. I think that, as was mentioned, home ownership for Caymanians is so important.
Yes.
Well, amen. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir. And I'll see you again soon.
Thank you, sir. Always a pleasure.
We hope you enjoyed our program today and invite you to join us next Sunday at 2 p.m. for more Cayman Conversations. Remember to like, share, follow, and subscribe to our Facebook and YouTube pages. And also pick up our copies of Cayman Times newspaper 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays at locations across the islands. Cayman Conversations are a production of the Cayman Times newspaper. Have a great evening and a fabulous week.